Well, welcome to today's webinar. It's titled Church360 Members. We're going to be focused on how to enter offerings today. My name is Peter Frank. I am the Senior Manager of Concordia Technology Solutions. You can see my contact information there. Email is usually the best way to get a hold of me because I'm not in my office all day, but you can call my office at that 268-1408 number, or you can call our toll-free number and our team there will get you in touch with me, or at least get you in touch with my voicemail. But I do always appreciate hearing from people in the church, hear how our products are working for them, if there's any suggestions or new ideas you might have, so please don't hesitate to contact me at all. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started today. There's going to be about 25 minutes for presentation, and then we'll wrap up with about 5 minutes for questions and answers at the end. So we've been doing these webinars during the month, and I found a very low number of questions. So if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them throughout. While I won't be answering them throughout, or at least not intentionally, I will get to them at the end, but it's always good to get your questions out while you're thinking about it. And I may just answer them as part of our outline for today. Now, the webinar is being recorded. This will be shared on our YouTube channel after the fact. We'll also be embedding it into our blog. So if you follow our blog regularly, you'll be able to see that posting there. And there will be an email notification when it's up. So it will be posted on YouTube probably later on today, and if not today, definitely tomorrow. So you can see it there. And let's take a look at our outline for today. We've got a number of things to cover. First, we're going to start off by looking at funds and talking how to set those up according to your chart of accounts. Then we're going to, I always forget to test the order of my PowerPoint. Let me go ahead and just put this all out, make sure that it's in the right order, so you can see it. Okay, so there we go. Sorry about that. We're going to then go right into entering offerings. We'll look at batches, offering types. We'll look at our new gifts in kind feature and how to use that. Then we'll go into a few things that are kind of on the outside. Envelopes, if you use those, we'll take a brief look at how to set those up. There will be a more detailed training webinar about updating your envelopes later on this month, and I'll show you how you can register for that. There's that topic can get a little bit complex depending on how your church does it, so there's more than enough to cover that than we can do today. We'll briefly take a look at pledges. I know not all churches use pledges. And then we'll look at Vanco, which is an online giving solution. We'll look at the integration for that. So if you use Vanco, I'll show you how to update it. If not, you can kind of tune out for that second, although you might want to pay attention because it's a pretty great integration. It's a great way to enter offerings very quickly. We'll look at reports, and then we'll do our Q&A after that. So that's our outline for today. As you see, we've got a number of things to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to my view here of Church360 Members. Now this is the people view. This is in 100% zoom. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more for you just because I know that often when you're watching a webinar, it will not quite be the full screen, so hopefully you can see that. This is the people view. We're going to spend most of our time on the offerings tab, which is on the fourth tab up in the top left. So if you're following along at home, you can click on that. I do want to show you up here under user settings. So if you click on your profile photo, if you have one, otherwise it's going to be this blank photo, and go to user settings, you can see where the default view for you might be set at people. If the only thing you're doing is entering offerings, you can go ahead and set it to offerings right there and just save it. So then when you log in, it'll go to offerings. But we're actually going to start up in the settings cog underneath funds. And I'm going to click on that. I'm going to do a quick refresh of my screen. I'm getting some weird, on the right-hand side, I think some of the zoom affected that. All right, so under funds, this will be really your first step to entering offerings. And if you've been using Church360 Members for a little while, you probably already have this set. But just in case you don't, I wanted to show you this. It's real easy to add funds. And you put the fund name in. Now, you'll probably want to look at your chart of accounts and look under the income accounts that you might have there, because this will be how you tie your offerings to your income accounts. If you don't know about that, then talk to your church treasurer. If you find that there's funds that are missing that you might want to add, but you don't see them on your chart of accounts, I'd also talk with your church treasurer about that before you go and enter new ones, because you want to make sure that they align. Now you'll notice that there's a fund number in here too. I want to clarify what that number is. That number is to help with entry. It's not necessarily your account number. And you'll see that as we get into some of those shortcuts for typing in offerings quickly. So if you, we've had some requests about ordering your funds in that numerical order. You could do that by putting that name in there too. So right now it defaults to alphabetical. You can see that on the screen. If we wanted to add a new fund, it's just as simple as typing like Bible studies, or maybe we'll go adult Bible studies to be a little bit more clear. And then you can pick whatever number you want. We're going to put this as number 13. And the colors is just for reports. If you have a standard way you want to show colors as you go through Church360 Members, you can. Otherwise, it's not really that important. It'll pick a color for you. But then you just add funds. You can see it goes right there. There's a quick view to get to reports. We'll look at that a little bit later on. This will show how much offering has been given year to date in a fund. But like I said, we'll touch on that later. So we've added adult Bible studies. We'll look at that in a little bit. But that's how you set up funds. Now you can go and delete funds, but if there are offerings given to it, you cannot delete it. You can only deactivate it, and then it won't show up as a potential item on the list. But if you haven't given any funds to it, you can click on that delete, and you can see there under Adult Bible Studies, we can delete that. So, but once you get that set up, most likely you won't need to delete it, although there is often a use case to deactivate it. All right, that is probably enough on funds because it's pretty simple. I really want to dig into entering offerings. So under the offerings view, you can see that there's a few different things going on. Up at the top, you have the title, but then you have a date range. And this date range can be selected on this graph here. You can see this nice timeline, and then it gives you that kind of crosshairs. You can click and drag any specific time frame that you want. And you can scroll using these little handlebars on the left-hand side, also known as paddles. Now you'll see there's today, you've got that line, and if you wanted to go back a certain number, you click on that line and drag it to the left, and it'll tell you only in the last X number of days. Now that's important for saving reports. We'll look at that later on. If you find that you can't get the exact date you're looking for, it does try to snap to certain dates. So if like here it's going to the end of the month to the beginning, it makes it pretty simple for you. But if that's a little bit too difficult, I know that sometimes some mouses or mice are better than others. I don't know what the proper plural is for a computer mouse. But if you click up here on the date, you can scroll through and select which dates you want. So if you wanted to do January 1st through the end of the first quarter maybe, you could click that and then you'd have that, and it will automatically select it for you over here. Now what this is doing is it's filtering your available viewed, or your visible offerings I should say. And you can see that down here, and as you scroll down, each one is an individual line item. Now, if you'll notice, as I'm hovering over it, the colors will change for a certain selection of that. Right now it's showing by date, but it's actually not by date, it's by batch. So if you have multiple batches on a single date, it'll only hover over the batch. In this example here, we have one batch per date. And I know many churches will do that, although if you're a larger church, you may do batches of 25 or 50 just to help you kind of subtotals in there. And so we do provide that. Over on the top right, there is some reporting tools. We'll look at that later on. So to start a new batch, you'd click this button up at the top left, New Batch, and then you'll select your date. Now, you can enter any date on the calendar that has already occurred. You cannot put offerings, like future offerings, in place because they haven't happened yet. They may be automated giving through online giving or something else that it's going to come in, but we don't let you count your chickens before the hatch, or is that how the phrase goes? But so that's why you can't go ahead in time, but you can always go back. If you click on something like here, we'll click on the 11th. If you've set events to accept offerings, you can tie it to a specific event, but you don't have to, because many offerings will just come in either through the mail or electronically or through an endowment at a random time during the year. So you don't have to tie an event to it, but I think in most cases you'll probably have an event. So we've got our 2 different worship services and then Bible study. And we'll look at Bible study because that's the example we're going to use today. So we're going to add a September 11th adult Bible study batch, and you can see that here as you click on it. You'll see that's from adult Bible study, and right now there's nothing in the batch. There's no dollars given. Now from here you can always go back and edit this batch, so if you clicked on the wrong date or the wrong event, you can change it here. But that's probably not used too much because it's pretty straightforward. Now, if you're a regular user, a long-time user of Church360 Members, you'll see that there's a notification down in the lower right. We actually just released a new view to accommodate gifts in kind, and it's changed the order, which is why we've given an opt-in. We're only going to look at the new view today, but if what I'm showing you today does not look like what is in your account, it may be that you haven't switched to the new view, and you can do that by following the directions in this box on the lower right. It'll ask you to switch to this view. So let's get into actually entering an offering. We've already got our batch ready to go. The first thing you do is you would enter the giver. Now it defaults to loose offerings because often there will be in the offering plate there'll be just cash or maybe some coins, and you don't know who gave it, but you do want to track it. That's what loose offerings is. And so you could select that off the bat, but below that are all of your giving units, as we call it. Now, giving unit could be 1 or 2 people. And if it's 2 people, they have to be married and they have to be marked as joint contributors. And we'll look at that in a little bit. But otherwise, everyone in your congregation is put here, or everybody in your database, I should say. As long as they're entered into Church360 Members, they'll show up here. And you can select them by clicking on their name. So we're going to just start with Dave and Sue Abbott. And that is who is the giver. The next one is payment type. And there's 4 types of payment, and they are indicated by icons. So there is cash, there's check, there's electronic, which is most often a debit card or maybe a credit card. And then lastly, gifts in kind, which is indicated by a truck. And we talked about what is the best kind of icon to show. And gifts in kinds, if you're not familiar with that, are actual physical items, non-cash items that have been donated. They're a gift. And there's a lot of different regulations with this and ways of doing that. We'll look at that a little bit later on. But I'd say the 2 most common types that you would be entering would be cash or check. Now, electronic, we'll get into that in a little bit, although you can manually enter them. Many of those are done automatically through Vanco. So when you click on cash, we'll say, it will ask you for your fund. And that's what we were looking at before, is the funds. Now you can see here, it goes by most popular funds, and that's based on the data in your system. So which ones have been contributed to the most. Start with general fund. And then you can go here and click amount. So we'll type in $50. Let's say they put a $50 bill in there. Well, as soon as we type in an amount, you'll see that another line has added. It's possible that Dave and Sue Abbott gave $100, and $50 was to the general fund, $25 was to the building fund, and another $25 was to the education fund. So you can add as many different funds to a single line as you'd like, breaking it down as the giver has specified. So we are up to $100. Now, to the right of that, you could enter a memo about each one. So maybe the the education fund was to celebrate Jacob's birthday. Jacob is their son. And they may want to put that note in there and have that recorded. Well, that's great. You can put that just for that education fund, and we'll click enter, and that'll be added. And now you can see that's kind of been locked in. The colors of the funds have been applied, the memo is there, and the total line is there as well. Now on the far right, you will see that you've got kind of a matrix here, where across the top, you've got your type of offering, and across the side, you've got your funds. And this is going to show you all your totals. So if you really want to see your total amount, you can look right here in this top right, which will tell you $100. You can also look in the top left of the screen, where it'll show $100. So that's the basics of entering offerings. Let's get into a little bit more of the specific things that you can do, especially when it comes to time saving. So you'll notice that here we gave Dave and Sue Abbott. They're not currently assigned an offering envelope number, but if they were, you'd see like Sally Baxter here, where it's 102. Now you can in here type in the search. So if you wanted to look for Sally, you begin typing her name and it'll filter in. You can also type the offering envelope number. And so you could click Sally Baxter, and then maybe she gave a check, and her check number field, or the check number field, appears for her because you've indicated that it's a check. And you can put in the check number and move forward to just do the to enter in the funds from there. So maybe she gave a general fund, and again from there you can type to filter, or you can use that fund number. So you can click 1 and move to the next field. And so we'll say she gave $75 and she didn't enter a memo, so you can just hit enter from there. You don't have to enter a memo at all. So you'll notice we've started applying some different numbers to this. First it was the offering envelope, then it was the fund. There's also numbers available for payment type. What that means is that you can begin typing offerings in with your 10 key on your keyboard. So 103, enter, I pressed to select Kira Belton. Now it's cash, let's press enter. It was to the building fund, which is 4, I pressed enter. Then it was the amount, $30, and I'll hit enter. So the key fields that are absolutely required can all be entered numerically. And so if you think about the setup that you might be doing at the church, maybe you're getting your offerings in envelopes, and you put all your envelopes on the left-hand side. If you're right-handed, you'll put that on your left-hand side. You would pick up the offering envelope and begin typing. So you'll see it's offering envelope number 105, enter. It's a check, 2, enter. The check number is 789, enter. You enter the fund, in this case it's Adult Bible Studies, enter. You do $10, enter, and you've added it. And so you can go rather quickly as you get into this habit. You can do all of this with all the entry with your right hand while you're picking up and looking at the envelopes with your left. You can go very quickly. That's what we have recommended. That's what we've tested in congregations. We've made a number of different changes to this screen over the years, and it's based entirely off of user feedback. We'll go and watch people enter offerings, and this is the process that we have come up with and what we think is the best way of doing it. Although if you have suggestions, please don't hesitate to send those to us. And you can always do that through the information button down here in the lower right-hand corner. And you can just send us your feedback there. Now, we'll go ahead and close that. If you need to edit an offering, you can click on that row and you can make those appropriate changes. If you need to delete it, you can click the delete button right there and it'll confirm that you want to delete it. That's on that right-hand side. Let's get into a little bit more specifics. So we've talked about how you can enter in an envelope number, but what if you only want to see the offering envelope number? And I think we saw, or I did see a request come from that, a question, Sue, you asked that. Now that is done through user permissions. Up in settings, if you go into roles, you can see the different types of roles here. So maybe we have an offering entry clerk, or whatever you'd like to name that. You'd add that role, and when you see it, you would say they can enter offerings, but they cannot review offering totals. That means no reports. They cannot see individual contribution details. If you did that, then all that they would see when they go to enter offerings would be the listing of, let's go back to our, here's our batch over here. Oops. Actually, that's not the right one. That's the July 31st. I went to the wrong date. There we go. And we'll take a look at why that was fewer seconds. So there's our offering batch. If you only had access to view individual, or you could not view individual contributor details, then when you came here, you'd only see the numbers, and then below that would be a list of names. Because if somebody gives a check separate from an envelope, you wouldn't know how to enter them. So you'd still, in those cases, you'd be able to see those details. But if you just wanted to give that person the offering envelopes, then you would give them that and just give them the totals, and they could enter from there. So that would be how you'd see envelope number only. And in most cases, people are giving by offering envelope. I know that at every service that you have, there'll be some people who don't have an envelope, either a guest or someone who just forgot to bring their envelope. But that's the case. Let's take a quick look over at envelope numbers. It's up in settings. It's under envelopes. And from here, you can see all the different people and whether they contribute jointly or not. And you can see that check box there. When you click check the box, it'll combine those two lines. And you can see the new envelope. Now, there's a number of different ways that you can update your envelope records. We're not going to get into that today because we will have a separate training for that. Let's go here and look at pledges. Pledges, if your congregation uses it, you're very familiar with it. If you don't use it, then you don't need any use for the screen. They are completely optional. But what this does is it allows you to assign a giver. Here's Frank and Barbara Timmerman. And what they are pledging to give, maybe it's $25 every week, beginning September 1st and ending at the end of the year. Most pledges are at least a year, but in this case, for examples, we'll show it. And then you pick the fund, and you can add that pledge, and then you can track their progress to it. And that's through the reporting, which we'll get into in just a minute. Another thing I mentioned before was Vanco. Vanco is a provider of online giving. We've partnered with them to offer a product called eGiving, and that integrates directly with Church360 Members. Now, it would be under the Vanco integration. Because this is a live account, I'm going to switch over to a different account, which is on our test system. So up under the settings cog, let me zoom in a little bit here. Under settings cog, you click Vanco integration. It'll take you to this page where it'll say pull offerings from my Vanco account. It'll ask you to do a start date, and it won't put any information before that date. You'll need to get a client and web service user ID from Vanco and put in your password here. But from there, you'll enter just you'll match the givers, you'll match the funds. And it'll tell you what data has been pulled that hasn't been matched yet. So here in Vanco, Jack Adams has contributed, and you would find that giver on your list. Now, I don't think we have a Jack Adams in the system right now, so that would tell you, oh, I need to go add Jack, or maybe you know that Jack is the name of the account, but he's actually doing it on behalf of his mother, who is not very technologically savvy, and you would just tie it that all Jack's givings go to Julie Billings or something like that. And then you'd link it, and it would go down here, and you'll see all of the matched givers. You'll do the same thing with funds. And when you click on synced funds, you'll see that, okay, there's the coffee fund, or here's the general fund. You would sync that with your general fund and link those two together. Now, that combination of a synced giver and a synced fund means anytime somebody gives an offering with those two things that are already linked, it'll automatically create a batch and apply that offering for you. And so then you don't even have to enter it. We're going to go back up here real quick. it will just show up on this line as having already been entered, because in Vanco, they're marking what the date is, and they're marking the amount, and it automatically comes over as electronic because it's an electronic offering. So that's will help you save time by not having to enter that in each time you get an electronic offering. You just have to match it, the giver once and the fund once, and from that time on, all of those offerings will come across. So that's pretty neat. A couple other things I want to show you, and we're already running low on time. These 30-minute webinars go very quickly. From a reporting standpoint, you can go up here to Reports and click New Offering Report. That'll take you right back to the screen, so you don't have to go that route. You can just do it from Offerings. You click on Offerings, and you've got a few different tools for reports. One of the first things is the dates, which we've already shown you how to do. So you'd first select your date, and then you'd select your view, and you'd say, I want to see the individual offerings, or maybe you want to see summaries by fund. You could see those funds there. Maybe you want to see summaries by giver, and you could see that there. Now, anywhere that you have this hover effect, when you click on that, it'll add a filter. So maybe you want to filter by David and Sue Abbott, but you want to see their summary by fund. What have Dave and Sue given by fund? And then you pick your date range. And you can see that there. That'll update accordingly. And if they haven't given to a fund, it'll drop off. Maybe you want to do just that fund and see. It'll filter down that list. Now, however you choose to do this, you can save these views and save it as a report. And you just click up here. I want to look quickly. And the Save Report on the top right, you would just click that, enter in your name of report, Dave and Sue to Education Fund. Real simple. Click Save. And that'll show up under your reports. Right there, Dave and Sue to Education Fund. So that was pretty simple. We actually have another webinar scheduled for more detailed views on reports. Since the focus was on entering offerings, I wanted to show that today. All right. I think that is all for right now. We're already into our Q&A time, so I'm going to jump into that in just a second. I want to show a couple things. First off, I've mentioned a couple other webinars that we're doing. So if you go to our website, which I'm sure you've already been to sign up here, you can go down and you can see that here's today's. We're going to have the Creating Reports one next Tuesday at this time, and then Updating Offering Envelopes next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And you can register for those here. If you can't make those times, you can always watch these videos after the fact on our YouTube channel. Here's a listing of the many videos we have. These are the ones that we've been doing this past week or two now. And you can see those here. Actually, yeah, this is just the second week. All right, I do want to show a few other things. You can follow along on our blog where we'll post these videos, 360members.com/blog. And for all of this training and more, we do have that included in our printing training manual. That is a $25 plus shipping fee. Most of that information, though, is available in our help system, which I highlighted before, but I'll show you again. Right down here under the I button, this is where you can send us a message, but you can also see some of these help articles we have, so offerings overview, and I'll give you a walkthrough of kind of what I showed today. But I know that sometimes it's easier just to have a printed manual. That's why we have those available. All right, let's take a look real quick. Oh, one more thing. Here's our support number if you need that. So I'm going to keep that on the screen so you can write that down. My contact information is there. I want to take a quick look at the questions while you have access to that. The first question was regarding the entering offerings by envelope number only, and I did call that out. That's where you would go and enter your permissions to not allow certain individuals to see individual contribution details. They'll still be available to enter it, but it basically on the screen breaks the link between the name of the giver and the offering envelope, and that way if you want to keep that private you can. Let's see. Sue had a follow-up question about that. Is there a way to have the names not show? We do not show names to the people doing the applying of envelopes for us. Let me just go back in there in case I didn't answer it fully before. And I'll show how under permissions, if you go to Roles and you enter, where did I do? Offering Entry Clerk. You want to make sure that you cannot see individual contributor details. And then what you would do is you'd apply that to a login. And so let's go ahead and have Joe Arrington be a offering entry clerk. And we'll add that login. And I'll do a quick refresh, and I'll try to log in as her. I think this will work. Sometimes doing things on the fly like this are not the best way to go. Oops, I'm going to try to log in as her. We have access with this account. Yeah, it looks like because she hasn't accepted it yet, I can't log in. Yeah, I should have remembered that. So that is the gist of it. I'm sorry I can't show that in detail, but the important thing is to remember to set it so that that can see individual contribution details is not marked as checked. Okay, Donna had a question here. We do a weekly count each week and add the VanCo deposits according to the dates. How do you keep track of the VanCo deposits if they randomly deposit in? Well, the way you would do that would be to go here under Offerings, and you would do it by offerings, and you would track it by electronic. And I think in this case we have all cash. Let me go ahead and expand this view a little bit, and we can change, oops, filter that down. We'll change one of these to electronic, and I'll show you how you save that. Oops. So you would filter down by electronic just by clicking on that type so that you'd have it there. And then you can see the different, as you expand, you can see all the different electronic offerings. You could save this as a report here. So that electronic offerings in the last 6 months. Now, most likely, only VanCo users will be giving electronic offerings. If you do have electronic offerings coming in multiple ways, then that does get a little bit more dicey. You can track that based on who you know is contributing via VanCo or not. But I think in most cases, this would be a way so that you could see it. Now remember, those are individual transactions that are being deposited into your account. And if you are using a general ledger accounting program, we have ours, which is called Church360 Ledger. I know many others use QuickBooks. That's where you'll reconcile that. But in terms of tracking in here to see who gave what electronically, this would be the way to go. And you'd be able to see these individually there. Now you could view that by fund and see these electronic payments or only the electronic there. That's one way to go. But I think this is probably your best way of doing that. So then I hope that answers your questions. Nancy asked the question, where's the refresh for the page? You saw me do that earlier. There's 2 ways you can do that. Up in the top left, you can hit the circle button, reload this page, and that'll do it there. I also use the keyboard shortcut frequently. It's Control F5, and do that, and it'll refresh it. So those are all of our questions, and we're already out of time. So if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to contact me or our support team. Our support team is readily available, more so than me, but I'm always happy to answer your questions. So thank you very much for attending. Please be sure to watch for this video on our YouTube channel. And with that, have a great day. Bye.